I truly believe that dress code is very important. It's very important. It is extremely important to have a particular order or procedure, rules in place as to how a person is able to dress in a particular environment. Now, we know we live in a world which emphasizes so much on democracy, and people want to do their own thing. People want to. We have never seen such height of democracy in our civilization as we see today. More and more of the world is moving towards democracy as opposed to communism, where you're not able to do whatever you want to do as you choose to do it. Though there are some communist countries still existing in the world, like for example, Cuba in the Caribbean is still communist. China, to some degree, is still communist because the government own a great deal of the manufacturing there. And there are other places in the world that are communist, where the state dictates how things are supposed to be done, and there's a little bit of decisions from the people themselves. And I'm not saying that communist doesn't have a place, because when we look at communist government, we see where, to some degree, there it does make some kind of sense. We're not getting into that political affair, but that's something we could explore. But when we speak of communism, we're speaking of not being able to do what you want to do. When we speak of democracy, on the other hand, it is when you are able to make decisions on your own, as you will. You have a chance to vote, you have a chance to elect who you want to represent you, as opposed to in communism where you don't have to do that. And so we have gotten so used to democracy to a point where I think we abused our democratic process, our democratic privileges as humans, where we take doing what we want to do to the extreme, to the point where we totally make a mess of ourselves. And if you try to tell some people what they're doing is not right, that can also cause a problem, because they believe that they're free to do whatever they want to do and nobody should tell them anything. And so what we see coming out of democracy is a level of resentment and a level of selfishness among people, because you're able to make your own decision at your own free will. You believe that you should do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it, or however you want to do it, and nobody should say anything to you. Democracy didn't have to work that way. It didn't have to work in a way where we're trying to prove a point that we can do whatever we want. Democracy should still exist in a point where we take into consideration what we're doing and how it affects others, or people might feel. Here are some people saying, "Oh, I don't care what people think." It's a common thing that we say. It's a common reference we make whenever time we want to do whatever we want to do. "Oh, I don't care what people want to say." I do care what people want to say. If you're a business person, you have to care what people want to say, because if people find your business to be unfriendly, you have to care what they have to say, because they might not support your business. If you are a principal for a school, you have to care what people have to say, because your workers might not put out the amount of input that you want because of your behavior. If you are a teacher in the classroom, you have to be mindful of what people have to say, because parents can move their children to different schools and children might not want to participate because you don't care. It doesn't matter if you're a police officer, if you are a soldier, if you're a lawyer, a doctor, whomever you are in society, you have to care what people have to say. But it is something that we tell ourselves when we want to boost up our ego, to say we don't care. But we say, "Oh, I don't care what people want to say." I do care what people want to say, and you should too, you know? So don't let democracy cause you to behave foolishly. And so I'm saying all of this to say that I do believe that dress code has its place in our society, particularly in our schools. There are some children who comes to school with, particularly in schools which doesn't have uniforms. Some children are given too much freedom as to what they can wear. And there used to be a time in our society, a time in our world when we consider certain things to be inappropriate. There was a modest way of dressing. If we should go back to at least 50 years ago, there was a time when some some sort of dressing were not accepted in some areas. And even today, because even if you go to a church and you dress a particular way, they might not put you out, but you might find the church mother come around with a piece of cloth and cover your leg if you're a woman and you dress in something that is too short and revealing. They might come and cover you up because in that space, this kind of dressing is not deemed to be appropriate. If you're going to court, for example, you don't show up to court in your pajamas. You don't show up to court in your a woman just show up in a nightie, as you call it, in the Caribbean. Or you just don't show up in a sleeveless merino if you're going to court. I mean, you don't show up in your shorts and slippers to stand in front of the judge. No, there is a particular dressing that way in which you dress before you go in front of a courthouse. You know, so there has always been a kind of dressing for a particular space. But for some reason, we're finding where schools have lowered their bars. The bars are not as high as they used to be. The barricades are lowered. The fence has been pushed down to a little bit, or we would say they've lowered the fence, where too many persons are able to step over without any form of concern. I'm just using the metaphor there. But there ought to be a particular way you dress in a particular space at a particular age as well. You know, we can't afford to have children coming to school and their blouse is so low that you're able to see their breasts, or their armpits are exposed where you can see their skin, or their shorts or skirts are so short where you can actually see their underwear. You know, there has to be some kind of dress code in place. And when you go to different places, and I'm speaking outside of the Caribbean, because in the Caribbean, uniform is still a thing that much emphasis is placed on. But when you go to places like in North America, particularly in the United States and in Canada, you realize that the rules are not as strict as they are in the Caribbean. And for those who grew up in the Caribbean, like in Jamaica and Trinidad, and those who grew up in the Barbados, St. Lucia, Antigua, Bermuda, and Dominica, and those formerly British colonized territories, there is a particular style of dressing that we were exposed to through colonization, which we maintain even today, that we do not dress a particular way. So when you get to places like North America and to see how certain things are allowed, you know, it makes you think, it makes you wonder what's going on. I mean, it's not a part of your culture to see children coming to school and you're able to see certain parts of their body, because you are used to a skirt, a female dress not being a certain height above their knee. There is a measurement that you use as to how high or low the dress can be. I mean, a boy's pants can be a little bit short above the ankle, yes. And in some schools, you might find shorts being worn, but much emphasis is always placed on the female as to how they expose their bodies. The material you're wearing as a female must not be too thin, where someone is able to see your underwear through it, your undergarment through it. So there is a space, for dress code where we do not allow children to wear whatever they want to wear. And as we say children, we also have to take into consideration the fact that these children are not buying the things by themselves. Their parents are the ones who purchase these items. These students are not coming to school on their own. Their parents drop them off to school. So are we saying that these parents see the way their children dress and still send them out into the society, send them out into the world, into the environment, dress in this kind of way with their bodies being exposed? The parents themselves sometimes do not care, because we see it all over the Caribbean, we see it all over North America, where more people are dressing they're so liberated, they're dressing in ways that expose their bodies, and they're not as concerned as they used to be 50 years ago. Women are dressing more skimpily, women are showing their bodies more. Being sexy now is about showing off your body. If you're advertising something to eat or something to drink or even a sports car, it's about nakedness. It's about showing skin. It's about appealing to sexual desires in everything that you do now. If you look in the commercials, if you look all over on the billboards, you're driving past on the street, it's about women that are partially naked, advertising products, even products that has nothing to do with sex. That seems to be the appetite for society. And so women are somewhat cultured, or I want to find the right terminology. They are influenced to think that dressing this kind of way is appropriate. It's the in thing. It is what is being done in our society. And we see now where that is trickling down to our children, because if their parents are not dressing in a particular way, shorts to go everywhere, some women are wearing tights to go some places, some women are almost wearing some things like just their underwear. It's a short, you might think it's just their underwear. The breast is being exposed, legs are being exposed. The men are wearing their pants below their bottoms, and all these kind of things. And so children see these things and believe that it is okay. And not only do we see it on the streets now, it is now coming into the school system, because the children, and school is just a microcosm of the society. So whatever is affecting the society out there is going to come into the school system, because these children are coming out of the society to come into schools. They are coming from homes out in the community, and children learn from their communities. And they are coming from environments where these things are happening, and they're coming into the school system. And so they represent what is being done in their homes, what is being done in their communities. These children can't be blamed. They are being grown and they are being raised by adults who allow them to do what they're doing. And so we find that dress code seems to be losing its place in a number of places. And I think there is a place for certain things. And I think the school should be a place where children understand that, look, you don't need to show your legs, you don't need to show your breasts, you don't need to show your arms. There is a way in which we do things, When the school loses that kind of moral compass, it seems to have said to the society that it's okay for us to be this way. The school ought to be the model in our society. The same way you have to dress a particular way to go to church, you have to dress a particular way to go to the courthouse, or you would dress a particular way to go meet the king, or if the prime minister is coming over to your house, you dress a particular way. Why not do the same when you're going to school? Why school is no longer a place where dress code is something that much emphasis is placed on. It's something for us to consider. And if North America is doing it, we know very well that most of the influences around the world comes through the media from North America. A number of behaviors that we see and trends and patterns we see in the Caribbean are fed through the American media, through the North American media, whether it's Canada, the United States of America. We see where that kind of behavior has been trending in the Caribbean, and things are changing, and people are thinking differently from the way they used to think 50 years ago. And so dress code is one of those things that I don't believe that a time or a generation should determine how dressing is done. I think there is a decent way and an indecent way of dressing, and that should not be changed based on generation, because dress code do have its place in our society.